What's up, guys? Thanks as always for supporting the show. It would mean a lot to me if you would take a second to scroll down and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any more of our videos. Also, make sure you follow us all over social media so you don't miss any of our content or show announcements. All right, let's bring Jackson in here and let's get to some of your guys' questions.
Let's do it. We're going to start with who has been the MVP of the first round so far. And we only have basically one game in from every series, but still, it's a
Oh,
fun question.
man. That is a very good question. Let's see. We've only had one set of game twos so far. So I feel like it would have to be somebody from tonight's slate, right? Um, man, I think Kawhi and Steph. I'll give a mutual
Yeah.
a double award to Kawhi and Steph, just because like those two individual performances, what Kawhi did tonight as a shot maker and what Steph did last night. I got in trouble with some Warriors fans. I always get in trouble with stans for not being nice enough. It's like the weirdest thing. Like I said last night that Steph's performance was one of the better ones in his career, which is a pretty innocuous statement, and I just got absolutely slayed for it online because he's had so many better games. And it's like, first of all, we got to stop looking at box scores. Like, if you watch that game, he made 11 out of 12 shots. Like, he made every single shot out of it, almost every single shot out of a dozen incredibly difficult shots in a game where he was the only guy who could generate offense when the entire game plan was built around stopping him. It was a remarkable Steph Curry performance. I was blown away by it. And then Kawhi, every bit as impressive tonight for the Clippers. I would go with the two of those guys. What do you think, Jackson?
Yeah, I agree. The chat was saying had a lot of Kawhi, and I think it has to be between those two with the way that both those guys just rose to the moment from a playoff shot making standpoint, and also really feel like they controlled the game beyond just
Yeah.
the shot making. It felt like both guys completely controlled the pace, the flow. It felt like they were creating good offense, even when it wasn't actually just pure jump shot making. So I think it's got to be between those two.
That's a great point. I totally agree.
All right. Between the Clippers and Denver, which matchup is more difficult for OKC?
Oh man. I would go with Denver. I think they have the specific ability to more consistently punish their lack of size with Jokic. The Clippers had some issues with the Thunder for stretches this year too. The Nuggets logged a couple of wins. It's worth mentioning their last win involved a little bit of weirdness with J-Dub going out with, I think, a hamstring injury, and then they just started double teaming Shea every time he crossed half court. But they did hang 140 on the Thunder defense in that game. They Denver completely blew this game down the stretch, Jackson. I don't know about you, but I thought Denver was about to go up 2-0. And I was
For
literally sitting there
sure.
thinking, watching the game, I'm like, man, like these guys, here they are again. It looked like they were dead to rights like a month ago. And now they're looking a lot closer to the team that, contended for a championship over the last couple of years. If I was OKC, I'd much rather play the Clippers. I think the Clippers' lack of playmaking talent would be a disaster against OKC's turnover forcing defense.
Yeah, I think the strength of the Thunder defense. I mean, they got Hardenstein is good and Chet is good and switchable, but the strength of their defense is just how many wing athlete bodies they have to throw at every other skilled offensive player. And I think that would be much more effective against a team like the Clippers. That where you got so many bodies on to throw at James Harden. I mean, Kawhi's pretty big, so it's probably just mostly Lou Dort, but you got still a lot of bodies you can throw at Kawhi and a lot of swarming that we've seen Kawhi struggle with in this series.
And against a worse rotation team in Denver,
Dramatic.
not just a worse, but like a flat out bad rotation team
Right.
relative to the better teams that we have in the league. I want to very quickly credit though both of them in the sense that I do think both of those teams are capable of beating the Thunder.
I
I'm
agree.
not trying to underrate the Clippers. I just personally think Denver's a little more capable of the upset there.
Yep. I'm with you. We got a couple of Warriors questions. Is the Warriors' lack of interior size going to cost them these playoffs, or could Steph and Jimmy and their defense make up for the lack of size?
So there's all this talk about size with some of these specific teams in the West. Like there's a lot of talk about size with Minnesota. It's not Minnesota's size that concerns me. It's their athleticism. It's their overall length and athleticism. Uh, the the Thunder are not a team that presents substantial size related issues. So there's and the Lakers don't either, with the exception of LeBron and Luka. So like if let's say Golden State beats Houston, you're facing one of Minnesota or the Lakers in the second round. I think the Golden State defense is capable of doing much more damage to Minnesota's offense than the Lakers defense is capable of doing. And I don't think Minnesota's bigs are the types of bigs that would do substantial damage to the Warriors defense. So neither of those teams I think could be particularly damaging. You're probably looking at OKC in the conference finals. They're not a particularly big team. And then coming out of the East, you're likely getting Boston, who's not a particularly big team. So I I don't want to sit here and pretend like it wouldn't be great if the Warriors had a little bit more size on the front line, but I don't think necessarily it will show up in a real damaging way in this West playoff run.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of talk about size, and there's different ways that size can manifest. To your point about the Timberwolves attacking the offensive glass or something like that, but not the size that I think people are critical of the Warriors is interior defensive size. And the only way to punish that is with if you have someone who can actually do that, which not that many teams do anymore. The Thunder are not running a lot of post ups because I think the Warriors are small if they played each other, right? Like the Nuggets, you can say, yeah, and the Clippers, I think would be the two teams that their centers are problems on the inside if you don't guard them with size. Even Draymond, who's as good of a defender interior against both those guys, Jokic and Zoo, that's a much more tough challenge on the specifically about the size issue than any of the other teams in the rest of the playoffs.
Yeah, I totally agree. And your odds of actually facing Jokic or Zoo in the conference
So
finals are
low,
pretty low
so
because the
low.
Thunder will be favored, even though we think that those teams can beat the Thunder. My main concern about I'm actually curious to see if this matches up with your main concern, Jackson. My main concern with Golden State actually winning 4 playoff rounds is consistent offense.
Yeah,
It's like Jimmy Butler hit 6 jump shots against the Rockets last night. Like, is he going to keep hitting 6 jump shots every night? Because if it's not that, they don't really have a reliable offensive player beyond Steph. And Jimmy's been great so far, but like I have my skepticism after how he finished the regular season. So like I think it's more likely that if like Golden State gets eliminated at some point in the first 3 rounds, you and I are sitting here talking about how they need more shooting and more like reliable play finishing, not necessarily size on the front line.
yeah, I agree. They sort of feel like not. It's very different stylistically, and even about the way that their success comes. But it feels similar to the Nuggets to me actually a little bit, where it's like they're so heliocentric in a different way. It's not like Steph is pounding the ball, but their offense is so predicated around actions around one player, and it's like that can be really challenging, especially when that player's off the floor. But if you're in the game at the end, you really feel confident that that player is just good enough to lift you up over the top. So it's sort of a double-edged sword of do you have the 47 minutes, 46 minutes of enough offense to get you there when, because in the last two, you feel, even though it didn't work out that way for the Nuggets tonight, you feel relatively confident that your singular player is going to lift you over the top.
Yeah, this is why I'm so interested in the Cam Johnson piece because, like, and I mean, who knows? He could be a pipe dream for the Warriors. We'll see. But there's a very specific reason why Jimmy Butler fits so well in this system, and it's because he's such a great read and react player that can play off of Steph. And yeah, they can have him take a random ISO possession here or there, but he's pretty efficient in those situations because of his ability to hit mid-range jump shots and his ability to get to the foul line. And like Jimmy can do it, 4 or 5 times in a game, and it feel like it happens in the flow of the offense, and it's not as disruptive as it can be like when sometimes Kuminga will hijack a possession to disrupt the flow of the offense. But a guy like Cam Johnson is the type of player that could legitimately like score 20 points a game entirely in the flow of the Warriors offense, while also being a guy who was trusted with the primary point of attack assignment a lot for Brooklyn this year and actually showed some real defensive chops. So like as a big picture goal for the Warriors, yeah, like I like to put it simply, and we can kick this back to you here before we get to the next question. Like, would you rather have a legitimate center that fits the goal of this team as a starting caliber center, or would you rather have Cam Johnson?
Oh, I think definitely Cam Johnson.
Yeah, right.
He's in almost every way a knockoff prime Klay Thompson.
Yeah,
In almost every way. And if you insert that guy back into this system and then with Jimmy Butler still on the roster, it's a very diverse set of ways you can score the basketball all of a sudden.
yep, I totally agree.
All right. I like this question. Getting back to tonight's game. Do you think tonight showed David Adelman's inexperience with the way he was subbing in the fourth quarter? Couldn't tell if he was overthinking or second guessing. I do think, to be fair to David Adelman, it seemed like Michael Porter Jr. did get hurt at the end of the game. But I think the question about Adelman's inexperience feels relevant.
I think he's done fine to this point. I think he's pushed the right buttons. I thought closing with Russ was the right move in game one. I thought closing with MPJ was the right move tonight. And when you factor in the mistake that Michael made and the injury, it made sense to go back to Russ late. I didn't necessarily have a problem with any of those moves. He had the quick hook with Russ after he had that bad turnover along the left sideline. Like, I think he's been managing. Like, at a certain point, we got to blame the players.
Yeah.
Like, Aaron Gordon smoked a dunk. Michael Porter Jr. coughed the ball up in crunch time. Like not putting yourselves in the same position when a guy's getting double teamed is like basketball 101. Like you'll hear yelling about that shit in a pickup game or in a high school game. Like that's spacing 101. Put yourself in a position where you're not easy to guard. And when you start standing next to each other, you're easy to guard. Like so many of the things that happened in Denver tonight were like legitimately self-inflicted wounds.
I agree. And I think the same can be said even of Jokic's turnovers, which is relevant to the next question, which is what changes does Jokic need to make to claw back in this series? And I think specifically the question is probably about turnovers because he had, I think, 7 tonight. And some of them, like there was that one where he was they were really shading the whole defense of that side of the floor. Peyton Watson is in the dunker spot, ready for a lob, and Jokic just kind of throws out of bounds. Like he had some weird very, very uncharacteristic turnovers tonight.
I was screaming at Peyton Watson on that play. I'm like, dude, cut! You're gonna get a dunk, and he was just a second late, and there was like a mild disconnect there where like Jokic threw it to where he was like right after he ended up cutting. And it's like I saw that play coming a mile away. I was like, dude, the dunk is there. Peyton Jokic wanted it. He was too late on the cut. But I mean, Jokic will have a game like that every once in a while. He had a game with 7 turnovers in the Minnesota Timberwolves series last year too. And like, I want to give the Clippers some credit. They jumped some of the typical passing reads that he makes. There's some of them that were unforced too. Like the one with Peyton Watson, I really do think that one's on Peyton for not cutting when Jokic originally saw the play. The one late in the game that Kawhi got the steal, that's on Christian Braun and Russell Westbrook for legitimately just doing something really stupid.
Standing in the exact same spot.
Yeah, but then the one where he spun out of the post up and dropped it off and Chris Dunn stole it. The actual read was to the right corner. I can't remember who it was that was shooting over there at that spot. I think it might have been Michael Porter Jr.
Probably.
But he missed the tic-tac-toe read in that situation where Dunn made the rotation and he had to make but like Jokic will make mistakes like that every once in a while. I am infinitely more encouraged about Denver and their chances to win this series after 2 games than I was before the first 2 games. So all you Nuggets fans, take that for whatever it's worth. I used to think you had a pretty small chance of winning this series, and now I think you guys have a pretty legitimate chance of winning this series.
That is a perfect pivot to what I think is probably our last question of the night. Are you feeling worried about any of your picks, your series picks? And if so, who? Or not even, and not worried is the question, but also if you were one game in for most of the series, 2 for these 2 games. Are there any series that you would change your pick at this point?
So let's take a look at it. So Cavs Magic, or Cavs Heat. I ended up not doing series previews on those ones just because we got so run down and we didn't have time. We did 14 videos last week. But the Cavs Heat series, I called 4-1 or 4-0. That obviously is going to stay the same. Thunder Grizzlies, that one I feel relatively certain will be a sweep.
Mm-hmm.
I said sweep for Celtics Magic. I feel pretty good after game 1 that Orlando has a good chance to get 1 game just on the strength of their defense. And if Paolo and Franz have really nice games down in Orlando, but that obviously could also end in a sweep. Knicks Pistons is going about exactly as I expected it to this point. The Pistons clearly showing some ability to make the Knicks uncomfortable. but the Pistons now in both games have like kind of soiled themselves late, and they just happened to pull this one out because one Dennis Schroeder jump shot went in. But I think the Knicks will close that one out in 6 games. Pacers Bucks, very similar to how I felt after Lakers Timberwolves, where when I went back and watched the tape, I'm like, can someone go up to these guys and tell them that it's the playoffs? Like, what the hell are you guys doing? And so both of those series, the Pacers Bucks series and the Thunder or in the Lakers Timberwolves series, I'll have a much better feel for after game 2 because I felt it's really hard to tell how teams stack up unless they both bring their A game.
Right.
And like Minnesota and Indy brought their A games in game 1, and the Bucks and the Lakers kind of tried to ease their way into the postseason, and that went about exactly as you could have expected. Denver Clippers, I'm not going to change my pick yet, but I went into the series thinking Clippers in 6 and feeling pretty strongly about that. And internally, I'm feeling closer to coin flip now.
Mm-hmm.
So that should give you guys a general idea of where I stand. I'm never going to overreact to the first couple games of a series, but I think you can start to learn. Like there was a big one for me last year. Before Luka hit the game winner over Gobert, the Timberwolves had a 2-point lead in the final minute with a chance to tie the series, and I tweeted out the series was over. It was just like abundantly clear to me through 2 games that Luka was infinitely more comfortable picking apart Minnesota's defense than Ant was on the other end of the floor, and I just didn't see anything happening that would change that trend. And what do you know? Dallas went into Minnesota in game 3 and beat them, went up 3-0, right? So like, I haven't seen anything that has changed my mind significantly, but I would say, yeah, the Knicks, or excuse me, the Nuggets Clippers one is the one that I'm closest to changing my mind because I'm feeling closer to 50-50.
I think that's fair. I think the Pistons, I don't know, something about it. Something about
You're
it.
feeling it. You're
I'm,
drinking
I'm
the
drinking
Pistons
the
Kool-Aid.
Cade Kool-Aid a little bit. I'm drinking the Cade Kool-Aid a little bit. It doesn't feel
You're a
like
big Cade guy.
I'm a huge Cade guy. I'm a huge Cade
Yeah.
guy. It doesn't feel like I mean, I was texting you about this that yes, not the Pistons almost blew that game. But if either of their two very good 3-point shooters, Tim Hardaway or Malik Beasley, hit anything in that game, they would have been up 19 instead of hovering around 10 for the vast majority of the second half. Those guys were, I don't know what they finished at, but when I was texting you about it, at one point, they were combined 1 for 12. You got to assume it's a cliche, ha ha ha. The role players shoot better at home thing. If it's going to happen for them, it's going to be because some of those guys started to hit some shots.
So, well, let me ask you a follow up though, because like my feel in that game was very much like classic Eastern Conference knockdown drag out fight. And both teams shot in the 20s from 3, and McHale and OG missed a boatload of good looks. So let me ask you this. Like, who do you think is more likely to get it together and bring more offensive punch over the rest of the series, McHale and OG or Malik and Tim Hardaway?
I mean, McHale and OG, I think is the right answer, but I feel like process wise, Cade has been more effective at generating, which I think is true largely over the course of, as the two players are in general, but he's been largely better at creating better looks for his teammates than Jalen Brunson or Cat has for their teammates. The looks that Bridges and OG have gotten are good enough. They should make more than they're making. But I think the process wise, Cade is doing a good job against a good Knicks defense.
This is a really interesting take because I'm not sure I think I agree with you through 2 games. Like, I think Cade has done a better job. And so going back to my initial kind of ethos when it comes to the playoffs, like which team does a better job of making the other team uncomfortable? Like the Pistons are doing more to make the Knicks uncomfortable right now than the Pistons. I just think the margin is relatively small, and I just feel like the Pistons are far more likely to blow games over the course of the series. And they like, to your point, the Pistons basically controlled both of those games and damn near lost both of them,
right.
which is exactly why NBA history tells us
You're
that
right.
teams like the Pistons don't typically win the series. But I think the point you're making is extremely fair, which is through 2 games, Cade has been the better kind of like half court surgeon, so to speak, than anybody on the Knicks.